My story starts when I was 23, living in my grandmother's old house in the suburbs. She'd left it to me when she passed away, my father's mother, a kind woman who always made sure I had everything I needed. The house wasn't new or fancy, but it was solid and well maintained, sitting in a quiet neighborhood where you could actually hear birds singing in the morning. I'm Leslie, and back then my life seemed pretty straightforward. I had a good job, my own home, and what I thought was a caring family, my mom, my stepfather, and my younger half-sister Piper, who had just turned 18. They lived in a more modern house closer to the city, though they were still paying off a hefty mortgage that would take them many more years to clear. "Leslie, honey, can we talk?" my mom asked one Sunday afternoon when she came over for our weekly coffee. "You know, your stepdad and I have been thinking. This house of yours, it's exactly what we've always dreamed of. The quiet location, the garden space." I nodded, wondering where this was going. "And I know your commute to work is pretty rough from here," she continued. "Our house is so much closer to your office." That's when she laid it out, her brilliant idea to switch houses. They would move into my grandmother's house, and I would take their place in the city home. I'd just need to keep paying their mortgage. "Think about it," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "You'd save so much time on that commute, and the house is bigger, more modern. Plus, your stepdad and I have always wanted to live in a place like this." I considered it for a moment. She wasn't wrong, their house was newer, with an updated kitchen and more space. And the location would cut my daily commute in half. "What about the paperwork?" I asked. "Shouldn't we get something in writing?" Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Oh honey, we're family. Why waste money on lawyers? You know I'd never do anything to hurt you." The move happened quickly after that. I settled into my new place easily enough. Every month, I faithfully sent Mom the mortgage payment, usually more than the required amount, because I wanted to help pay it off faster. I put money into fixing up the house too, replacing old appliances and giving several rooms a fresh makeover. For 4 years, that was our arrangement. I paid the mortgage without fail, often contributing extra when I could. Everything seemed perfect. I had a shorter commute, a modern home, and what I thought was a solid agreement with my family. The business trip to the neighboring state seemed like any other, 2 weeks of meetings, presentations, and hotel rooms. I was actually looking forward to getting back home and sleeping in my own bed. The last thing I expected was to find myself locked out of my life. It was a chilly evening when my Uber dropped me off. I wheeled my suitcase up the driveway, noticing something odd. The porch light was on, and I could hear voices inside. Weird, since I lived alone and definitely hadn't left any lights on. "What the hell?" I muttered, trying my key in the lock. It didn't fit. I tried again, then again, my confusion turning to panic as I realized the locks had been changed. Just as I was about to call a locksmith, the door swung open. There stood my sister Piper, now 22, wearing my favorite fuzzy slippers and looking at me like I was some unwanted solicitor. Behind her, a tall guy I recognized as her new husband lounged on my couch, feet up on my coffee table. "Oh, you're back," Piper said, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk I wanted to wipe right off her face. "Your stuff's in the garage." I stood there, suitcase still in hand, trying to process what I was hearing. "My stuff? What are you talking about? This is my house." "Not anymore." She examined her perfectly manicured nails, the kind our parents had always paid for, even when they claimed they couldn't afford new school clothes for me. "Mom and Dad gave it to us as a wedding present. We're living here now." The world tilted sideways for a moment. "Are you insane? I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 4 years. "Yeah, about that." Piper rolled her eyes, looking exactly like Mom when she was about to dismiss someone's feelings. "That's not really my problem. Mom and Dad gave us the house, so." She made a shooing motion with her hand. "You need to leave. Get off our property, before we call the cops." Standing there on my own porch, suddenly homeless, memories started flooding back, all the times Piper had gotten special treatment. The new iPhone when I was still using a flip phone. Designer clothes while I got hand-me-downs. The brand new car for her 16th birthday while I took the bus. The expensive college tuition while I worked my way through community college. I stood there, trembling with rage, as my little sister prepared to close the door in my face. "Where am I supposed to go?" She shrugged. "Not my problem. Get a hotel or something. Just don't come back here." The door slammed shut. I heard laughter from inside, my sister and her husband, making themselves at home in the house I'd spent 4 years paying for, improving, making my own. I don't remember walking back to my car. I don't remember the drive to our parents' house, my grandmother's house, the one I'd given them in our swap. All I could think about was how this pattern had been there all along. The favoritism. The special treatment. The way Piper always got everything she wanted, while I was expected to just deal with it. But this? This was different. This wasn't just a new phone or a designer bag. This was my home, my life, everything I'd worked for. I stormed up to my old house ready for a fight. The porch light cast long shadows across the garden I'd tended for years before our swap. My hand was already formed into a fist when I reached the door, and I pounded on it hard enough to hurt. "Mom, open up. We need to talk about what Piper just did." I heard movement inside, whispered voices, footsteps approaching the door. But it didn't open. "Leslie," my mother's voice came through the door, muffled but clear enough. "Go away." I couldn't have heard that right. "What?" "Mom, open the door. Piper just locked me out of my house, the house I've been paying the mortgage on for 4 years." "That's not your house anymore," my stepfather's voice joined in. "And this isn't your house either. This is our house now." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What are you talking about?" "This is my house, Grandma left it to me." "You need to leave." Mom's voice had that stern tone she used when she thought she was being reasonable. "Go rent an apartment somewhere. Stop going from house to house making everyone nervous." I pressed my palms flat against the door, trying to steady myself. "Making you nervous? Are you kidding me? You've thrown me out of my home. Piper's living in the house I've been paying for, and now you won't even let me in to talk about it." "We've invested a lot in this house," Mom snapped back. "We've done renovations, improvements." "And what about all the money I spent fixing up your house?" I was screaming now, past caring what the neighbors might think. "The new appliances? The remodeled bathroom? The 4 years of mortgage payments? That's different." "Different how?" "How is it different, Mom? You planned this all along, haven't you? Get me to pay your mortgage while you lived in my house, then give my place to Piper and keep Grandma's house for yourselves? Real nice plan, leave me homeless while you all divide up my property." There was a pause, then Mom's voice came back, cold and hard. "You need to leave now, Leslie. This is our house, and we don't want you here." Something snapped inside me. For years of mortgage payments, countless home improvements, and a lifetime of watching Piper get everything she wanted, it all crystallized into a single, clear thought. "Actually, Mom, you're wrong about one thing," I said, my voice suddenly calm. "This is my house, legally. The deed is still in my name. Grandma left it to me, remember? And since you're so fond of kicking people out of their homes, maybe it's time I returned the favor." "You wouldn't dare," my stepfather growled. "Try me," I shot back. "I'm done being the nice one. I'm done watching you favor Piper while you use me. Get out of my house, or I'll have you evicted, legally." Silence from behind the door. I waited a moment longer, then turned and walked away. I had nowhere to go, but I knew what I had to do. An hour later, I was checking into a cheap hostel, my suitcase still packed from my business trip. I pulled out my phone and started searching for lawyers. The lawyer I hired, Mr. Thompson, didn't mess around. Within 2 days, he had prepared all the necessary eviction documents. I stood behind him on my porch, watching as he knocked on the door with sharp, professional raps. Mom opened it this time, her face turning pale when she saw the legal documents in Mr. Thompson's hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice crisp and businesslike. "I'm here on behalf of your daughter Leslie, the legal owner of this property. I'm serving you with an eviction notice." "You can't do this." My stepfather appeared behind Mom, his face red with anger. Mr. Thompson remained unfazed. "Actually, we can and we are. You have 3 days to vacate the premises. If you fail to comply, we'll be forced to involve the police and pursue legal action for forcible eviction." I stood silently, watching my mother's face cycle through shock, anger, and finally, fear. She tried to catch my eye, but I looked away. I was done with her manipulation. "Leslie, honey," she attempted, her voice sugary sweet. "We can talk about this. The time for talking was before you locked me out of my house and gave it to Piper." I cut her off. 3 days, Mom. That's all you get. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I stayed in my hostel, jumping every time my phone rang. But surprisingly, they actually complied. On the morning of the 4th day, Mr. Thompson called to inform me that my parents had moved out and the house was clear. When I arrived, they were loading the last of their boxes into a moving van. Mom stood in the driveway, watching me with red-rimmed eyes. "You're no daughter of mine," she hissed, tears streaming down her face. "You're a traitor. After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean using me to pay your mortgage for 4 years while you planned to steal my house?" "Yeah, thanks for that." She got into their car without another word, and I watched them drive away to whatever rental they'd managed to find. The moving van followed, and suddenly the driveway was empty. My house was mine again. Inside, I found chaos, drawers left open, things strewn about, but nothing major damaged. As I stood in my grandmother's living room, my living room, a thought struck me with crystal clarity: I was done paying their mortgage. They'd broken our verbal agreement the moment they locked me out of the house I'd been paying for. Now they could deal with the consequences. I sat down in my grandmother's old rocking chair, feeling her presence around me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. I couldn't stop thinking about all the money I'd poured into my parents' place. New kitchen appliances, that expensive water heater, the bathroom renovation. I'd treated that house like it was really mine, believing that one day it would be. The real kick in the teeth was the mortgage. For years of payments, always sending more than required, thinking I was doing something smart for my future. According to my calculations, there was only about $50,000 left to pay off. 2 more years of payments at the rate I was going, and the house would have been fully paid for. I'd been so close. All that money, I whispered to the empty room. All those extra payments. A memory suddenly surfaced, something I'd pushed aside at the time but now saw in a whole new light. It was right after we'd done the house swap. Mom had been sitting at her new kitchen table, stirring her coffee with that innocent look she always got when she wanted something. "Leslie, honey," she'd said. "I've been thinking. Since we're living here now, maybe you should just transfer the house deed to us. You know, make it official. We'll sign our house over to you once the mortgage is paid off, of course." I remembered how reasonable she'd tried to make it sound, like it was just tidying up paperwork. But I'd had a better idea. "Why don't we do it the other way around?" I'd suggested. "You can transfer the mortgage to my name now, and I'll keep making the payments officially. Then I'll sign over Grandma's house to you right away." The way Mom's face had changed, just for a split second before she covered it with a smile, I should have seen it then. "Oh, no," she'd said quickly. "That would be so complicated with the bank. Better to just wait until the mortgage is paid off. Then we can do a clean swap of both houses." Stepdad had jumped in then, nodding vigorously. "Much simpler that way, Leslie. No need to involve the bank or lawyers. We're family, after all." Sitting here now, in my grandmother's rocking chair, I could finally see it all clearly. They'd never intended to give me that house. They'd wanted both, their house and mine. If I'd signed over my grandmother's house like they'd asked. A chill ran down my spine. I would have been completely homeless right now. No backup plan, no legal claim to either property. Just out on the street while my family enjoyed both houses. At least I'd had the sense to keep this house legally mine. It wasn't much comfort when I thought about all the money I'd lost, but it was something. A roof over my head. A place they couldn't take from me. And most importantly, a lesson learned about trust, even when it came to family. Maybe especially when it came to family. My phone rang exactly 3 days after the missed mortgage payment. I was sitting in my grandmother's kitchen, drinking coffee and trying to figure out how to rebuild my life, when Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. But part of me wanted this confrontation, needed it, even. "Where's the mortgage payment?" She didn't even say hello. Her voice was sharp, entitled, like I was some delinquent tenant rather than her daughter. "The bank's going to charge us late fees." I let out a laugh that probably sounded a bit unhinged. "Are you seriously calling to ask me for money right now?" "Of course I am. You need to pay the mortgage." "Let me get this straight," I said, gripping my coffee mug so hard my knuckles turned white. "You kick me out of the house I've been paying for, give it to Piper and her new husband, and you still expect me to make the payments? Are you insane? That house belongs to Piper?" I cut her off. "Then let Piper pay for it. She lives there now, doesn't she? Living her best life with her husband in the house I renovated? The house I've been paying for?" Mom's voice turned shrill, hitting that pitch she always reached when things weren't going her way. "Piper can't pay the mortgage. She just graduated college, she's not even working yet. They just had that beautiful wedding, and they're still settling in." "Not my problem," I cut her off again, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Not anymore. You gave her my house? Great. She gets the mortgage payments too." There was a pause, then Mom's voice turned threatening, that same tone she'd used to manipulate me since childhood. "Fine, then we'll just move back into your house." I actually laughed out loud at that, and it felt good. "Like hell you will. Try it and I'll have you arrested for trespassing. I've already evicted you once, want to go for round 2? You can't just stop paying. We had an agreement. An agreement you broke when you gave my house to Piper and her husband. Besides, you're almost done paying it off anyway. What is it, about $50,000 left?" The silence on the other end made my stomach drop. It was the kind of silence that comes before really bad news. "Mom? It's more than that." Her voice had gotten small, almost guilty. "How much more?" Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "About $150,000. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, clattering against the counter, but thankfully not breaking. "What? That's impossible. I've been paying extra on that mortgage for 4 years. I put in thousands more than the required payments. There's no way." "Well, what did you do with the extra money I sent?" My voice had risen to a shout that echoed off the kitchen walls. "What did you do with it?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's next words made my blood run cold. "Oh, we paid the regular mortgage payments," she said casually, like she was discussing the weather. "The extra money you sent, well, we had expenses." "Expenses?" My voice was barely a whisper. "What expenses?" "Well, your stepdad and I needed a vacation after all the stress of moving. We went to Europe for 3 weeks, Paris, Rome, Madrid. Beautiful cities." She actually sighed dreamily. "Then there was Piper's college tuition, you know how expensive private universities are these days. And of course, we had to renovate the house." I couldn't breathe. 4 years of extra payments, thousands and thousands of dollars, spent on vacations and renovations, while I thought I was paying down the mortgage. "You stole from me," I managed to say. You took my money and went on vacation with it? Don't be so dramatic, Leslie. We're family. We just redistributed the funds where they were needed most. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. For an hour, I just sat there in my grandmother's rocking chair, trembling with rage and betrayal. When I finally managed to stop shaking, I blocked their numbers, all of them. Mom, Dad, Piper. Done. But of course, it wasn't that easy. 2 days later, they showed up at my door, pounding and yelling like they owned the place. Open this door right now, Mom's voice was shrill. We need to talk about the mortgage payment. I stood on the other side of the door, not moving. There's nothing to talk about. I'm not paying another cent. You have to, stepdad's voice now, angry and demanding. You're responsible for the payments. Actually, I'm not, I called back, feeling stronger with the solid door between us. But you know what I do have? Bank statements showing every payment I made. Text messages and emails about our house swap agreement. Evidence of fraud, according to the lawyer I talked to yesterday. Silence from the other side of the door. If you don't stop harassing me, I continued, I'll take you to court. And trust me, I can afford a long, expensive legal battle a lot better than you can. Want to try your luck? They left after that, but not before hurling a string of obscenities that would have made a sailor blush. I waited until I heard their car drive away before letting out the breath I'd been holding. A week later, my cousin Tracy called. Leslie, you might want to know, your parents are in trouble. They're struggling with the mortgage payments. They've burned through all their savings, even their retirement fund. And Piper, she had a huge fight with them when they told her she needed to start paying the mortgage. Apparently, she screamed that they promised her a free house, not a debt. The neighbors said they could hear the shouting from across the street. I hung up and stared out my window at the garden. The irises my grandmother planted were blooming, their purple petals bright against the green leaves. She'd always told me that you reap what you sow. I wondered what my family would harvest from the seeds of betrayal they'd planted. 3 months after I stopped paying the mortgage, I heard through the grapevine that my parents had finally shown their true colors to Piper too. My cousin Emma called to tell me the story. You won't believe this, she said. They actually called the police on Piper and her husband. Apparently, they told Piper she had to start paying the mortgage or get out. When she refused, they showed up with 2 police officers and an eviction notice. The neighbors said Piper was screaming about broken promises the whole time they were packing their stuff. But that was just the beginning. The calls started coming in from various family members, each with a new piece of the puzzle. Aunt Sarah told me they were asking everyone for loans. Uncle Bob said they'd tried to refinance, but been denied. Cousin Mark mentioned they were looking into reverse mortgages. Then came the call that really opened my eyes. Aunt Mary, Mom's sister, always the family gossip, had the real scoop. Did you know about the other loans? She asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They took out personal loans for Piper's car, that fancy Mercedes she got for graduation. And you won't believe this, but they borrowed money for her honeymoon too. Paid for her and her husband to spend 2 weeks in the Maldives. They're in debt up to their eyeballs. I sat with that information for a while, thinking about all the times I'd eaten ramen noodles to save money for extra mortgage payments. The final piece of the puzzle came from my friend Sarah at the bank. We were having coffee when she leaned across the table, looking concerned. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she said, but the bank sent your parents a demand letter last week. They're 3 months behind on payments now. I stirred my coffee slowly. Let me guess, they're about to lose the house? She nodded. If they don't come up with the money soon, the bank will foreclose. I knew what would happen next. They'd show up at my door, crying and apologizing, begging for help. They'd promise to do better, to make it right. Mom would probably bring her apple pie, just like she had when she first suggested the house swap. But I was done. Done being their ATM, done watching them favor Piper, done letting them manipulate me. They'd made their choices: multiple mortgages, personal loans, lavish trips, and expensive cars. Now they could live with the consequences. I looked around my grandmother's house, my house, with its solid walls and blooming garden. She'd left it to me because she wanted me to have a secure future, not because she wanted me to bail out my parents' bad decisions. "They're going to lose everything," Aunt Mary said in her last call. "Aren't you going to help them?" I thought about the 4 years I'd spent paying their mortgage while they spent money on vacations. I thought about being locked out of my house, about my things being thrown in the garage, about my sister living in the home I'd paid for. "No," I said finally. "I'm not." Sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is that you can't help people who won't help themselves. My parents had made their bed, now they could lie in it. I had my own life to live, in my own house, with my own future ahead of me. And this time I wasn't sharing.